All right, let's dive deep into some potential trade targets for the Dallas Cowboys after the crucial date of June 1st. This date really shifts the landscape because after June 1st, most teams, including the Cowboys, unlock additional salary cap space, making it easier to execute trades. It's not universal for every team, but a majority see that financial flexibility increase, which opens up possibilities for moving players around in ways that just aren't as cost-effective before that date. What makes this even more interesting is that post-June 1st trades can generate more cap savings compared to pre-June deals or outright cuts, which don't offer the same financial designations. The Cowboys have already been active this offseason, making several trades, and the buzz is strong about whether they'll continue that momentum. One of the most talked about names when it comes to post-June 1st trade scenarios is Jalen Ramsey from the Miami Dolphins. This one is intriguing because the financial incentives for Miami are huge. There's about an $18.5 million difference in cap savings between doing a trade before or after June 1st. That's a massive chunk of change, and it certainly makes you think Miami might want to explore moving Ramsey. But the real catch here is the guaranteed money involved. Ramsey is owed over $21 million guaranteed in 2025, which is a heavy price tag for any team to swallow, especially for the Cowboys, who traditionally haven't been big spenders on high-priced trade acquisitions. So even though having Ramsey would be a huge boost to the Cowboys' defense and is exciting to think about, the financial reality makes it unlikely they'll pull the trigger on a trade. That's unless Miami is willing to eat a big portion of that guaranteed salary, which from what we can tell, doesn't seem all that likely either. So this one feels more like a pipe dream right now. Thrilling to imagine, but probably not going to happen. Moving on, another cornerback that gets brought up in trade talks is Jaire Alexander from the Green Bay Packers. He's got a similar financial headache attached, about $17.5 million in guaranteed cash owed to him. The Packers could save quite a bit by trading or cutting Alexander, and they've shown openness to trading him, but it looks like offers haven't been good enough to justify moving him because of that large contract commitment. From the Cowboys' perspective, Alexander is an appealing fit. When healthy, he's a lockdown corner who can line up both inside and outside, which offers a lot of versatility to a secondary that could use some stability. The problem is he's battled injuries and has played only 14 games over the last 2 seasons, which raises concerns about his durability moving forward. Taking on that risk, especially with such a hefty contract, is a tough pill to swallow. Still, if you had to choose between Alexander and Ramsey, Alexander might make more sense as a 1-year rental at a cheaper cost, offering some immediate defensive help without the long-term financial burden. If the Packers decide to cut him instead, you can bet the Cowboys would be all over that opportunity. Then there's Taquan McMillan, who hasn't gotten as much attention but could be a smart and affordable addition. He's playing on a low-cost, non-guaranteed rookie contract, which is very unusual for players who end up being traded. Usually, the guys who get moved have bigger price tags. McMillan got some playing time last season with the Broncos and even started a few games, showing himself to be a solid nickel corner option. He's not a star, but he's reliable, and his interception-to-pass breakup ratio last year was respectable. Plus, there's a connection there with Savon Revel, the Cowboys' defensive coordinator, which could make McMillan an intriguing piece for the secondary. Even with Job Barron likely taking over nickel duties in Denver, McMillan could still become available. And for less than the league minimum salary, he represents a cheap insurance policy or a rotational player with upside. Another name that keeps popping up among fans and insiders is DJ Reader from the Detroit Lions. Reader is a nose tackle who's known for his stout run defense and solid presence on the interior defensive line. Exactly what the Cowboys need to bolster their front against the run. Although he's getting up there in age, Reader isn't a liability in pass rush situations and offers a physical presence that's hard to replace. The challenge is Detroit is a contender and doesn't seem to be in a hurry to trade him. They've invested in their defensive line with recent draft picks and signings, and it's unlikely they'll give up a key piece like Reader unless forced by cap or roster constraints. Even with that, if he were to become available, the Cowboys should jump at the chance because this is the kind of player who can immediately impact their defensive front. On a related note, Brick Martin is another defensive lineman from the Lions who might be a more attainable target. He was a third-round pick out of Western Kentucky, but hasn't really made an impact yet. If Detroit is willing to move on from him, he could be a developmental project for Dallas with some upside. Switching gears slightly, defensive tackles Andrew Billings and Javon Dexter from the Chicago Bears are also names worth considering. Billings is a fairly inexpensive player who has done well in a nose tackle role. The Bears have crowded their defensive line recently by adding players like Grady Jarrett and Shamar Turner, which could force them to part ways with someone like Billings or Dexter just to manage the roster spots. Billings played about half the season last year, and while that isn't ideal, his style and size are reminiscent of former Cowboys defensive tackle Terrell McClain, who was effective in run defense despite being undersized. Pairing Billings alongside a player like Mazie Smith could really shore up the Cowboys' interior run defense, something they desperately need. Javon Dexter, although cheaper and younger, is in a bit of a tricky spot given the new additions to Chicago's defensive line. He has the size and frame to contribute in multiple roles, but the Bears might look to trade him or even Zach Pickens, their third-round pick from 2023. If Dexter becomes available, the Cowboys would likely show interest, especially since they've favored players drafted in the early rounds who might still have untapped potential. Harrison Phillips of the Minnesota Vikings is a more speculative option. He's a starter, but doesn't produce eye-popping sack numbers. Instead, he's a very solid run stopper. The Vikings have made some additions to their defensive front, which might make Phillips expendable, especially if they want to save cap space. He might be a bit pricey for a third-string defensive tackle, but if Minnesota wants to shed salary, Phillips could come into play. The Vikings have been busy adding talent up front, including players like Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, which could make Phillips redundant. From the Cowboys' perspective, he's an intriguing name to monitor. Beyond the defensive line and secondary, there's also some chatter about running back options, although these tend to be more about keeping an eye on a market rather than guaranteed moves. Players like Travis Etienne, Rachaad White, Jerome Ford, and a few others could become available or make sense for Dallas to consider. Etienne's contract is relatively high for a running back who isn't a clear starter, and he missed OTA sessions, which might complicate things. Rachaad White is more affordable and could be a solid addition, especially if Sean Tucker doesn't impress. Jerome Ford outperformed Nick Chubb last season at times, but there are questions about his consistency. Players like Damon Pierce and Kendre Miller are cheap but not standout talents, while Devin Singletary could be a useful third running back option, although his salary is on the higher side. In general, the Cowboys' biggest needs right now seem to revolve around shoring up the defensive front, finding reliable corners who can play both inside and outside, and adding depth at running back without breaking the bank. The post-June 1st window is going to be a critical period where cap flexibility can allow Dallas to make moves that were financially impossible before. It will be fascinating to watch which players become available, and if the Cowboys are willing to take some calculated risks on injured or high-cost players in exchange for potentially game-changing talent. The season is still a ways off, but the roster chessboard is already in motion, and these trade possibilities could reshape the team's identity heading into the year. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are swirling in the NFL world, and this time, the Dallas Cowboys find themselves in the hot seat. Troy Aikman, the legendary former Cowboys quarterback and Hall of Famer, recently threw some serious shade on the team's defensive line heading into the 2025 season. While the Cowboys have long been hailed for their potent offense and star-studded roster, Aikman's blunt assessment has set off a firestorm of speculation among fans and analysts alike. The buzz began when Aikman voiced concerns about the defensive front, highlighting vulnerabilities that could haunt Dallas if not addressed promptly. Known for his candid insights, Aikman didn't mince words, suggesting that the Cowboys' defensive line might struggle to contain the increasingly dynamic offenses they'll face next year. With the league evolving into a pass-heavy and fast-paced contest, Aikman hinted that Dallas's current defensive front might lack the necessary speed and depth to keep up with opponents, leaving the defense exposed. This critique is stirring conversations in locker rooms and front offices around the league. The Cowboys have invested heavily in offensive weapons, but questions about the defensive trenches remain. Could this be a sign that Dallas might pivot their offseason strategy towards shoring up their defensive front? Rumors suggest the Cowboys might be eyeing trades, free agency targets, or draft picks specifically to reinforce their line, aiming to transform this perceived weak spot into a formidable barrier. Fans are already debating the potential fallout. Some speculate that if the defensive line fails to improve, Dallas's playoff hopes could be jeopardized despite their offensive firepower. Others wonder if AIKMAN's comments are a subtle call to action for team management and coaching staff to rethink their defensive approach. Could we see a shift in defensive schemes, or perhaps a renewed focus on developing younger talent within the Cowboys' ranks? Moreover, this criticism comes at a time when other NFC contenders are aggressively upgrading their defenses, which only adds fuel to the fire. The Cowboys might find themselves playing catch-up if they don't respond decisively. The next few months promise to be a whirlwind of negotiations, rumors, and strategic moves as the Cowboys work to silence the doubters and prove that their defense can rise to the challenge. One thing is clear. Troy Aikman's words have opened a door to intense speculation and anticipation. Whether this serves as a wake-up call or just a harsh critique remains to be seen, but the Cowboys' defensive line will undoubtedly be under a microscope as 2025 approaches. Will Dallas answer the call and fortify their defense? Or will this be the Achilles heel that holds them back? The rumor mill is buzzing, and the NFL community is watching closely. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.